Okay, continuing with guest shiurim. It's a week of Shliach, so the regular shiurim from Kohen are temporarily on hold today. Tomorrow will be the last guest shiur for now, and then next week we're going to be back in regular shiurim. Today I have a friend, a very good friend. He's older than me, but still a good friend. Who we did Dayanos together. Both of us got the same time Dayanos. We sat on the Torahs together. And whenever I need I'm beginning to to somebody, a lot of times I call the one standing next to me, Rabbi Mendy Cohen, Shliach in Sacramento, and also Mechaber Sfarim, two or three, or third one already, two on the Rambam. And you definitely saw his name in all the Haaretz Biurim on a regular basis. So he's going to be speaking about a topic that you're not learning this year in Kailo, not Yuchsin, not Eruvin, but it is Hilchos Shabbos. And it's going to be on Seder Achnos Shabbos, which is in the back of Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, and in the back of Sidurim, in case you don't know. So that's going to be. We did discuss it in short last year, but it's going to be a full shiur on the topic. Please give your attention to Rabbi Cohen.
Yeshakoyach Rabbi Shochat. As Rabbi Shochat mentioned, I had the schus to learn with your illustrious Reish Hakelo, and like the Rabbi Levi Yitzchok Berditchever said about the Alter Rebbe, mir am alle gegessen von ein Schissel. Aber der Litvak hat gegessen die Smetana. Can I know that Rav Shochat is an unbelievable Pesach, and it's an honor to be with him. When he asked me to do this, you don't tell Rabbi Shochat no. Anyways, whoever wants some papers, only if you're interested. If not, you have it. There's a story with the Rogatchover going. The Rogatchover was looking at a clock, and the clock was ticking. The seconds were going. And the Rogatchover said, Kuka fazege, ein Minute Shabbos, is doch chiyuv skile. And when 1 minute finishes, is Oy Shabbos, is Eis de Kedusha, is Arop de Chiyuvim. Zmanim is very, very important. I was learning with my daughter Chumash, a Pella de Kazach. It says in Parsha Bereshis, Ader Eibishter Bashafed, the sun and the moon, Le'eses u'le'me'adim u'le'yomim u'le'shonim. To tell you when is Rish Chodesh, to tell you when is Shabbos. Zokt Rashi, u'le'hoyer al ha'oretz gamkein. The main sibe of the Shemesh and the Yoreach is to tell you Rish Chodesh and to tell you Shabbos. Shedon no chazach ulahoyer al haaretz. But the main mitzias of Shemesh and Yoreach is a mitzias teironis, is a mitzias to tell you when heiptzich on Shabbos. So we're going to discuss a machlekes, like Rabbi Shochat mentioned, a very old machlekes, but there's so many different halachas that depend on this machlekes, and it's very important. And I'm sure you know this already, but Efshat Menepes zugeben, but this is Yisei Ha'hiro that you're learning in the scale. I want to bench in the beginning before I start. Is dort alle Matzliach sein und Meifitz sein bei Klal Yisrael. I see here Rav Shrage. So the Eibshtach alle Matzliach sein. Okay. We start with a Gemara Shabbos. The Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos Lamed Dalet, Tanu Rabbanan, Bein Hashmoshes. What's the mitzias of Bein Hashmoshes, known in English as the twilight zone? Is azeh, drei sveikes. Sofek min hayom u'min halayla. You don't know, maybe it's meshed together from Yom and Laila. Sofek kuli min hayom, sofek kuli min halayla. There's another sofek, maybe it's all day or it's all night. What's the halacha? Matilin eis elechem shnei yomim. It has the chumash of both days. Ve'ezo bein hashmoshes. When does begin bein hashmoshes? Mishatishka achama, once the sun goes underneath the horizon. Then there's a Gemara in Shabbos, another Gemara in that Shabbos, the Itmar, Shiur bein hashmoshes bekama. How long is bein hashmoshes? Omer Rabbi, Omer Rav Yehuda, Omer Shmuel, Shloisha chelkei mil, 3/4 of a meal. How long is a meal? There's a big machlekes if a meal is 18 minutes or 24 minutes. But for our discussion's sake, for now, we'll say that a meal is 18 minutes. If a meal is 18 minutes, how much is shloisha chelkei meal? 13 minutes, about. 13 minutes plus change. Then there's a Gemara in Psochim Tzadik Daled. The Gemara says, Mishkia sachama v'atzeisa kechovim arba smilin. That from Shkia till Tzeis is arba smilin. How much is arba smilin? 72 minutes. So we have a big problem. Machlekes, the Gemara in Astira, the Gemara in Shabbos says Shleisha Chilki Mil, and the Gemara in Psochim says Arba Milin. So is it 13 minutes or 72 minutes? So there's 4 Shittas Arishenim. We're going to focus today on the Rabbeinu Tam and the Goenim, how they learn. Pshat, to answer this stira. Before we go into answering the stira of the Gemara in Pesach and the Gemara in Shabbos, there's other Gemara in Shabbos, also important to know. Tanya nami hochi, keichov echod yom. If you could only see one star, it's day. Shnayim ben hashmoshes. Once you could see 2 stars, it's ben hashmoshes. Shleisha is Laila. So Yitzias Tzeisa Kechovim is 3 stars. Omer Rabbi Yosi Le Kechovim Gedolim Hanirim Bayom. There's very big stars that because of their greatness you could see them now middle of the day. The Le Kechovim Ketanim Sheinirin Ela Balayla. It doesn't mean 3 stars that you only could see when it's mamish dark. Ela beinunim, it has to be shleisha kechovim beinunim. Okay. Rabbeinu Tam, how does he answer the stira? He says like this. There's 2 shkiyas. There is a poil mamish dike shkiya, and then there is a halachic shkiya. If let's say this is the sun, right? The sun is shining. As soon as it goes underneath the horizon, it's still day. It's still a little light. You don't see a burning sun, but there's still some light. That's the physical shkia. It goes off the horizon. Then there is a halachic shkia. The halachic shkia is 55 minutes later. And that's what the Gemara says. In the Gemara in Shabbos, Omar Shmuel Shleisha Chelkei Mil. Shleisha Chelkei Mil means taka 13 minutes But right before the 72 minutes, the Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch paskins like Rabbeinu Tam, that those 55 minutes are not Shabbos, like Rabbeinu Tam. And the halachic shkia starts 55 minutes after the pale mamish dike shkia. And until then, the Alter Rebbe says, Rotzo lasi shkulei teisefes, you can make a toast for Shabbos, but it's not Shabbos. Yes.
No, it says.
Huh?
The Gemara says is after 72 minutes.
Yeah.
It's after 72 minutes.
Yeah.
So Shkia is in the beginning?
Shkia is before Tzeis, and Shkia, according to Rabbeinu Tam, is 13 and a half minutes before Tzeis HaKechovim. Okay. You see the certain Satmar Chassidim, most of them are Machmir like the Goinim, but certain people, they drive around till Mamish 55 minutes after Shkia. Und sich gebeten bei sei, and Eretz Yisrael, whatever you do in your home, do. But it doesn't look right when people are walking to shul and everyone is dressed, and most of them don't do it barabim. Even those that are make like Rabbeinu Tam.
So in time there's pages of Gemara Pesachim, Shkias Cham over there is the Poel Mamish Dike.
Yeah. Yeah. Kumen di Geoinim, and they have a different shita. Rabbeinu Tam says the Shkia is not Shkia. Kumen di Geoinim, und sie sagen, Tzeis HaKechovim is not. Tzeis HaKechovim is not Tzeis HaKechovim. There's two Tzeis HaKechovim. There's Tzeis Kol HaKechovim, and there's Tzeis Shloisha Kechovim. Tzeis Kol HaKechovim, when you can see all the stars. You go to a planetarium, when they make it, they show you on the ceiling all the stars. When it's light in the room, you can't see stars. As soon as they make it dark, you see all the stars. So, Tzeis HaKechovim, according to the Geonim, is Tzeis Kol HaKechovim. That's Pshat in the Gemara in Pesachim. But the Gemara in Shabbos, when it says Shloishish Chelki meal after Shkia, the halachic Tzeis HaKechovim is taka 13 minutes after Shkia is Tzeis HaKechovim. That's the shit of the Geonim. There's a beautiful video of someone going to the Rebbe and asking the Rebbe, why did the Alter Rebbe paskin in the Shulchan Aruch like Rabbeinu Tam that Tzeis HaKechovim is 72 minutes later, and then in the Siddur he changed his mind like the Geonim to say that Tzeis HaKechovim is earlier? Why? Shabbos is Adeiraisa, he tells the Rebbe. So why wasn't he machmir by the going out of Shabbos, that you should be machmir in the onset of Shabbos like the Geonim, and at the end of Shabbos you should be machmir like Rabbeinu Tam? Why did he paskin only like, why? So the Rebbe tells him, I don't understand your question. Was ist ein Shaila? There's a whole arichas on it in the Siddur. So he continues asking the Rebbe, why was he Mishana? So the Rebbe tells him about because the Alter Rebbe knew how to learn more than me and more than you. It's a short video. So now we're going to go to the Alter Rebbe's Siddur, because there's a problem with the shit of the Geonim and the shit of Rabbeinu Tam. The problem with the shit of Rabbeinu Tam, 72 minutes after Shkia, you could see a lot more in Shloisha Kechovim. So how could you say that Tzeis HaKechovim is only then? Faket. According to the Geonim, there's another problem. The Geonim is a problem 13 and a half minutes after Shkia, how we know it. It's hard to find a star. So there's a problem, but this is a very, very important problem, a very, very important machlekes. We're going to go look at the Alter Rebbe's Siddur now. And maybe we could, the Alter Rebbe makes a shift, 180 degrees, and paskins like the Geonim. And we'll see how he does it. Zog the Alter Rebbe, we'll learn a couple of pieces. Meid, tzorich lizoir badlokas nedis lahadli kedim shkiyas achamo shkiyo anidis. Dainu beid Hashem zerech berosh yilones besode beoretz hamisha she'en shum har b'mayrev. Ay berosh yigagim agvoyim be'ir. Veloi la'asis achakach shum melocha klal kedei leheisif mechil al kedesh ma'at. Ki achas siluk ubia se'er mirosh ilonis v'gagim agvoyim bikimoi dalet chelki shishim misho shekoidim nutin azai hishkia amiti shu siluk ubia sahor mirosh agvoyim sheberetz Yisrael. The Alter Rebbe, in order to answer the Shittas HaGoinim, and what did we ask? That 13 and a half minutes, there's no stars to be found. So the Alter Rebbe started, first of all, you have to add 4 minutes in the beginning. There's something called Shkiyo Amitis and Shkiyo Anidis. Shkiyo Anidis is sea level. Shkiyo Amitis is 4 minutes later because you go at the Roshei Horim Agvoim Sheberetz Yisrael. So here, the Alter Rebbe is stretching the Shkiya of the Goinim, the Ben Hashmosh of the Goinim, 4 minutes before. We already gained 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. By the way, just we're learning halacha l'maisa. The Shalom Ber Levin says that here in New York, it's not 4 minutes, it's 2 minutes. And it's negiel halacha l'maisa. We'll get into it later. Some people say 3 minutes. But the Alter Rebbe says something very interesting. There's a mitzvah of Tosfos Shabbos that you have to be moisif michoil ala kodesh. What's that shiur? You could be moisif as much as you want from Plaga Mincha. But what's the shiur? The shiur, 2 minutes. You could be moisif a little. Based on this chiddush of the Alter Rebbe, if you stop doing melacha by shkia, that's 80 minutes after candle lighting, you were mekayim the mitzvah of Tosfos Shabbos, because there's a difference between shkia amitis and shkia anidis. Then the Alter Rebbe adds further. He says that a meal is not 18 minutes, a meal is 24 minutes. So the Shkiya of Rabbi Yehuda, which is Shleish Rive meal, is not 13 minutes, it's 18 minutes. 18 plus 4 is 22 minutes. Here ready? Then the Alter Rebbe says something else. This answers the shit of the Geonim, which is Eipech HaChus. The Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos that there is another shit in Shkiya. The shit in Shkiya is that it has to be. Rabbi Yossi says that Bein Hashmoshes is keheref ayin. Ze nichnas v'ze yoytze. If you say ze nichnas v'ze yoytze, the Alter Rebbe learns in Seder Achnos HaShabbos that that's 2 minutes, and you should be machmir like Rabbi Yossi. So how many minutes do we have already? 4 plus 18 plus 2 is already 24 minutes. Then the Alter Rebbe says, if you see 3 lines from the bottom, V'uvadai lailo gam l'Rabbi Yossi be'eretz Yisrael b'yomim hashovim ki mishakasu b'smag hilchos truma. That this shiur of 24 minutes, which we're talking about, or 22 minutes, is only in Eretz Yisrael. And we're in Eretz Yisrael. Biyomim Ashovim in Nisan and Tishrei, where the sun is by the equator. Basically, there's a big machlekes brought down from the Mishnah Brura. If in this Shiur, bin Hashmoshes, you go by the minutes of Yomim Ashovim, 72 minutes, 20 minutes, it's always. Or do you go by degrees? How much the sun is under the horizon? That's a different minutes. So this the Alter Rebbe also answers. And with this he answers the shit of the Gehenim. There's no shaila. Why there's no stars after 13 minutes after Shkia? Because the Gemara is speaking there only about Yomim Ashovim. So he says, Sha'oz uzman tzeis gimel kichovim beinim be'eretz Yisrael b'yomim elu v'gam b'chol acherev kimat. Ta'aynu shozar akia b'taharose. It's clear, you could see 3 stars to those that know. So, he's talking Eretz Yisrael. He's talking Yomim Ashovim. And he brings that it's also a Rambam. The Rambam says that Seis HaKichovim is Shlish Sha'ah, a third of an hour after Shkia. A third of an hour is 20 minutes. So the Rambam also paskins like the Gehenim, and that's where he gets it.
How much Shlish is 24 minutes?
20 minutes. But this explains the shita of the Gehenim that it's not neged achush. Let's skip around a little. We'll go to Tov Tov Kuf Aleph, the last paragraph. The Shulchan Aruch paskins like Rabbeinu Tam, right? B'derech klal, there was a big shaila on Rabbeinu Tam, because how could Rabbeinu Tam paskin something which is neged achush? So the answer that Rabbeinu Tam lived in Europe, there was a longer shkia. But the problem is that the Beis Yosef, who lived in Tzvas in Israel, why did he paskin like Rabbeinu Tam when it's neged achush? The Alter Rebbe answers this. And even the Sfadim that always paskin, Avad Yosef especially, always paskins like the Beis Yosef, here he says it's neged achush and we're makabel like the Goyim. He says further, Avo ein lismich klal. Lahokil, to be makil al pi mashakosar Rabbi Yisrael b'Shulchan Aruch l'Shabbos b'Shem Yeshemrim v'das Rabbeinu Tam b'Sayate. Don't rely on the Bala Mechaber Shulchan Aruch. Sha'at kedei hilo gimel mil nervia asher karav l'shov beinis achar hashkia, which Rabbeinu Tam paskins, like we said, that close to 55 minutes after Shkia Yom Gomor, and only after those 55 minutes begin the 13 minutes of Rabbi Yehuda. As like the Gemara says, what we learned. Shemishki as the Gemara in Psochim. Shemishki as Achamat Sakichovim who kidei hiluch dalad milin. Lechere, you could rely on Rabbeinu Tam, on the Beis Yosef. Zokte ki kvar chozer be'Beis Yosef b'Shulchan Aruch yedei chosmila. In the Pirush in Shulchan Aruch in the yedei chosmila, he was chozer be'Beis. What did the Alter Rebbe write first? Hilchos Mila or Hilchos Shabbos? Hilchos Mila is in Yedei. It's after the Chaim. So the Beis Yosef, you can't rely on the Beis Yosef because he had Charot. The Alter Rebbe had Charot, the Beis Yosef had Charot. O Pasuk b'Pshitis, the Acher Ashkiya miyadi ben Hashmoshes, v'chein Pasuk Hashachshom, v'chein Pasuk HaPirchot Shel Chaim, that the Shkiya ben Hashmoshes, right by the real Shkiya starts ben Hashmoshes like the Goyim. And then the Alter Rebbe says, V'taimam v'nimukam imohem. You could go according to them. Ki rabbinetam v'sayate yichido ininu. Neged agenim rishim Rav Shir goin avhai b'nei Rabbi Mashaka Rabbeinu Chananel v'oriv v'orambam v'orayvan. There's an interesting shit of the Raivan that's not brought down in the poskim, because the Raivan shita in Ben Hashmoshes is not negil alocha. Why? The Raivan says that Ben Hashmoshes is for 72 minutes. Hilu Dalad Milan. But it doesn't make a difference. But the Raivan paskins like the Goinim that the start of Shkia is the real Shkia, and right then starts Ben Hashmoshes. Even though Riba Latesim Balaitur Inu Basroi, the Cholka Benetam, the Chin Kos Varosh, B'Shem Rav Rabbeinu Yoina, Umakam Kideo Zu, Hu Neged Hachush Uplion Izgova. He says that it's Neged Hachush. That you look, you see there's a lot of stars, and it's very dark. So the Alter Rebbe paskins like the Goinim. There's an interesting shaila regarding, we know that a woman has to make a hefsek tahara, and she has to make it before Shkia. Right? She has to make it before Shkia in order she should be able to start counting Shiva Nikiyim. If she misses Shkia, so that Moshe wants to paskin in Igris Moshe that she could make a hefsek tahara up to 9 minutes after Shkia. What's his svara? His svara, the lomdus, is like this. Since Ben Hashmoshes is a sofek, it's one sofek. Then there's a machlekes of Rabbeinu Tam and the Ge'inim is a second sofek. So it's a sveik sveike. If it's a sveik sveike is mutter. So you could make a bedika until 9 minutes after Shkia because of sveik. How did he come up with 9 minutes? We have the Shiur of the Alter Rebbe 18 minutes, because he says a meal is 24 minutes. We have the Shita that is 13 and a half minutes because a meal is 18 minutes. How did Rav Moshe come up with 9 minutes? Rav Moshe came up with 9 minutes because he said that in the New York, New Jersey area from Shkia to Tzeis is 50 minutes, not 72. And in the Gemara it says that Shkia to Tzeis is 4 meal. So Shleish Shadivi meal will be 9 minutes, because each meal is 12 minutes divided into 50, something like that. The Shevet HaLevi argues with him. The Shevet HaLevi says, even though we're machmir by Knesses HaShabbos and by Yitzias HaShabbos, to go like Rabbeinu Tam, Chaz v'sholem to be meikil by Yisr Kodesh, he says. We're machmir like Rabbeinu Tam, but not because we paskin like him. It's a heisishkin sofik. In Gidra sveike, you can't allow to make a hefsek tahara up to 9 minutes. Allah has kama v'kama us, that we paskin like the Alter Rebbe. It's not pshat that we paskin like the Ge'inim. Mitzat sveike the Yisr Kodesh. The Alter Rebbe paskins like the Ge'inim beli sofek, because the Shita of Rabbeinu Tam is neged achush. So then, for sure, for a Lubavitcher Rov, you cannot be meikil to make a hefsek tahara any more than 2 minutes. because those 2 minutes you get, because there's a difference between Shkia Haniris and Shkia Amitis. I once was, someone told me a story once. He was in the mikveh Shabbos, Erev Shabbos, it was late. So he tells someone, Shkia! So the guy says, Shkia, I go by Shkia Amitis. But that's not true. Because even though he go by Shkia Amitis, you have to have taste for Shabbos, right? And this is what the Alter Rebbe says in the beginning of Seder Achnos Shabbos, that's your taste for Shabbos, so you can't be making. That's by Shabbos. By Shabbos you can't be making. But by Yisuri Nida you could be making. But only 2 minutes, because we paskin like the Goinim. Then there's another interesting shaila. There's a halacha that on Shabbos you cannot be sheil tzrocha b'Shabbos. Once you're mekabel Shabbos, you're mekabel taste for Shabbos, you cannot daven the vochadike mincha shmona esrei. So it's brought down lahalocha in Shmona Shabbos Kilchosa that if you're davening mincha late, you're running late, so you should daven 2 Shmona Esres for Ma'ariv. Because once you're Mekabel Shabbos, hot nish kin ort to be Sheil Tzrochav. So we have to explain the minig that we see that Melamed Tzchus and Afidin, right? And we see they daven late. Not only after Shkia Nidis, after Shkia Amitis, they daven late. How could you daven late Shabbos? The Vochadike Mincha. So the Alter Rebbe says like this. On Tov Tov Kuf, sagt der Alter Rebbe, Uposku b'gemora alocha k'Rabbi Yisrael l'chumre k'mei b'yetzias Shabbos or Krishma shel Arvis l'chayetza b'hen she'en evad elaylo atzeis ha'kachov ma'benenim begedel gufim b'rikiya u'be'eram. The Alter Rebbe says that generally by Yetzias Shabbos and by Krishma, which is a mitzvah d'oraisa, it's not laylo till tzeis ha'kichovim mamish. Since we don't know what Beinanim means, in our Fridays, we just started now, they changed the clock. People are running late, they light Shabbos after the Shkia of the Goinim. וגם באנושים מהמיורץ וקלי הדס מלאכס אחרס צורך לידיום שהוא איסור גומר של תורה. Since the Alter Rebbe passes like the Goinim, he says if someone does a melacha on Shabbos, you have to be mechiach them, because it's Shabbos mamish, because it's not achshash, maybe we're choishish l'shitas ha-Goinim. It's a psak, and you have to be mechichom b'dvorim rakim b'koshim ula yishmolei. So Shabbos mamish, chil Shabbos, you have to tell them, you have to scream at them. Aval sagt der Alter Rebbe im yidei ashalei yishmulei. But if you know that they won't listen, lo yechicham v'lo yedim klal klal. Don't tell them anything. Ki mutav sheyu shegigim v'al yu mezidin. There's an interesting clan, the Gemara, Kedisa b'Gemara, it says by Teisus Yom HaKippurim, if you see people eating, and you know they won't listen, better don't tell them anything. You don't have a chiyuv eichocha. V'hainu, when do you say there's no chiyuv eichocha? The Gemara, it says in Hilchos Shabbos in Yom Kippurim Tafish Ches, dafke by dvorim am feroshim b'teira. Dafke teike v'achar shkia at somach tzisha achakach, Ki oz b'keiru l'chatzi shah acher hashkia b'cherev, cheva shel teira limchis b'yodam. Once the shkia of the Geonim pass and shkia v'rabbinatam starts, then you have to go with the whole chemer adin. Shebevada yisur shel teira in eimin mutav shir shegigim. Then the Alter Rebbe says, Ubekayitz Ashir Mishtane. Okay, it's different because when you're passing like the Goyim, Shabbos comes out different. So even Chatzi Shor, you have to be Moiche because it's. Then the Alter Rebbe says, V'yesh Shemrim, that even by a suffix Shal Teira, it's Kevada, you have to be Moiche. And the Chein Ike, it's Mamish Shkia. The Alter Rebbe brings the two machlekes. But then the Alter Rebbe adds, Avol inyan minche, but davening late. Shimi divrei seifrim, ein limchus b'yad ha'makil me'mechel b'Shabbos. O b'frat b'shas ha'tchak b'meis ha'cherev shayim kotze. Just like the Chacham say you could do an Isser Shvus and Isser D'Rabbanan. Bein ha'shmoshes b'shas ha'tchak ol tzerech mitzvah veres. So the same thing you could daven mincha. What's the whole issue of davening mincha? The whole issue of davening mincha is only an issue d'Rabbanan of osir lishol tzracha b'Shabbos. For this, it's okay to daven mincha late. There's an interesting discussion on Yemei HaTainis. The Rebbe was always makbid to daven ma'ariv early. First daf Yidden fasten. You go the earliest shit of Tzeisak Yechovim, 25 minutes after Shkia, very early. Here is a whole other chekira because b'negei the Tainis you daven mincha early, you daven ma'ariv early so you could eat. The shaila is, could you eat before saying Krishma? I think my uncle Rabbi Groner said that you should be, when you get home, it's already after the real Tzeisak Yechovim, right? We learned that by Isuri Teira you have to be machme late Tzeisak Yechovim. So since it's so you have to say Shema before you eat. And Rabbi Eleven, he said you could be soymech on Krishma Shalamita. If you're a person who doesn't say Krishma Shalamita, then you're not allowed to eat before you say Krishma. But if you're a Yid who does say Krishma Shalamita, you could rely on Krishma Shalamita. You don't have to say Krishma Shalamita after. And they brought a raya because they never announced in 770. Go home, break your fast, make sure to say Krishma before. No one ever said that. There's an interesting Kuntrasach, an interesting Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe says that the reason you have to say Krishma before you eat, because maybe by Krishma Shalamita you'll be tired. And maybe, it's in, I think, Reish Samar Gimel, and maybe then you will not have Kavona l'shem mitzvah. Aida vissam and azok shma, as ich hab Kavona ton dem Eibish's mitzvah to be bekabel malchus shemayim ba'erev. So that's why it's better to say Shema when you eat before you're so tired and you may forget. Very interesting argument. But you see here the importance of Kavonas HaMitzvahs. There's another interesting, so this is, I think, any questions for this? We'll move further. Any questions? Alts Klor. Okay. There's another interesting shaila regarding Zmanim. You come to communities, they have in the summer, they make Shabbos early. For Shabbos, you daven late, 8:30, 9 o'clock is after Tzeisak Yechovim. So in all the Lubavitcher Botim Midrashim, you have Mincha, then people sit down to learn, gleiche Zach, and then you daven Ma'ariv after Tzeisak Yechovim. It could be 9:30, 10 in the summer, very late Shabbosim. We don't care. It's also interesting in the Sefer that Rabbi Shochat put together. The Rebbe says they had a Pegisha here, and they wanted to daven Ma'ariv Kabbalah Shabbos early so they can have a normal time dinner. And the Rebbe says when people come to Crown Heights, daven sie weisen immer zur Yiddishkeit. Man muss der Empfer. So the question is, what's if you come into a community where you daven Shabbos early? The halacha in Shulchan Aruch is that if you come to a city with the tzibur, the main Beis Medrash, daven Shabbos early, the whole city is nigrar after that person. So what do you do if you come to a city and they don't... before we go further, there's a beautiful Tzemach Tzedek in the Pirush HaMishnayos. If you come to a city where they daven Ma'ariv early, like Boston, Sacramento, it's hard to get a minyan. So summertime we daven Mincha Ma'ariv 8 o'clock, and we daven Ma'ariv before the Zman. And this is a whole other shaila, because how could you daven Ma'ariv before the Zman? There's the Gemara in Masechta Shabbos says, there's a machlekes of Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachomim, if you could daven, when could you daven Ma'ariv? Rabbi Yehuda says after Plaga Mincha, and the Rabbanos say after Tzeis. So it says in the Gemara in Broches that the halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda and not like the Rabbanon. David Kemarovid, David Kemarovid. You could, but it's brought in Shulchan Aruch that you can't mix and match. Once you davened Mincha late, that means you hold halachas like Rabbi Yehuda. You cannot come and daven Ma'ariv then too, because maybe the halacha is like the Rabbanon. Like Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda says you could daven after Plaga Mincha. So how can you daven Mincha and Ma'ariv together after Plaga Mincha? That's a big problem. So best is to daven Mincha before Plag, and daven Ma'ariv early after. So there is a Kaf, there's a Kaf HaChaim, there's a Stira Mishnah Brura for Reish Lamed Gimel, mit Hilchos Shabbos, and Reish Lamed Gimel I think is Matir, and because if you can't find a minyan, a bigger heter is on Erev Shabbos, but it's all a tadim. It's not the real way of doing things. But if, let's say, I come in the summertime and they want to daven Ma'ariv early, there's no minyan, sometimes it happens, there's only 9 people, I tell everybody, go home, because we don't daven Ma'ariv early, you can't do the Kulish Shnehem. So that's the Shaklavataria. So the Tzemach Tzedek says, what's if you come to a town like Sacramento in the summer, and they daven Ma'ariv early, and you're from Crown Heights, you have the real Yiddishkeit, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem, and you want to daven Ma'ariv Bizman or after Tzeis. Should you daven with a minyan, or should you daven like you're hidden? What do you guys think? The Tzemach Tzedek says.
Daven yourself.
Yeah? Why? That's what Tzemach Tzedek says. Daven yourself. Because to be mahadeh, it's more important than tefillah b'tzibur. It's a fascinating Tzemach Tzedek. Okay.
Are you allowed to drive after the Ma'ariv? And both that are locally in the...
Oh, this is the shaila what I'm getting at. If you come to a city where they daven Ma'ariv early, can you do melacha? Because now the Shulchan Aruch says that the whole city is nigrar after the Beis HaKnesses. Rav Moshe comes with a big chiddush, and he says like this, that this halacha, that the tzibur is nigrar, is only if the community has a minig to be mekabel Shabbos early, in the winter and in the summer. Let's say we know there's people make Shabbos 18 minutes, we light candles 18 minutes. There's a fourth shit of the Yereim which we didn't mention. He says that Bein Hashmoshes is 18 minutes before Shkia. So if they're machmir in the winter and the summer to do like the shit of the Yereim, by the way, if you do the shit of the Yereim, then you have to do it 20 minutes before Shkia, because you need 2 minutes for Teis Shabbos. So if they do it 20 minutes, or your Shalayim where they do it 40 minutes. By the way, why do they do 40 minutes? Because once the lady lights candles, the Achonis for Shabbos finish, and people could go to Shul and daven Mincha Bizmano to be Nizir, not to daven Mincha later. But if you're doing it just in the summer, so you're not doing it l'kovid Shabbos, you're doing it l'kovid Beten. You want to eat early supper? By the way, there's another fascinating discussion. If, let's say, your kids are small, they want to daven early. So Shlomo Zalman says, don't daven early. Eat with your kids early. Then go to shul. Daven bizmano after tzeis. And come home and eat a kazayas to be yotzes to the Shabbos. Fascinating discussion. But here that Moshe says, you're not nigda. The Shevet HaLevi argues with Rabbi Moshe. The Shevet HaLevi says, you're nigda. Because they were Mekabel Shabbos, you're nigda. There's also an interesting discussion if the wife is nigda after the husband. Let's say the husband davens very early. Is he nigda? Also a big machlekes haposkim. But all the poskim agree that even if you hold that the Isha cannot do melacha for her husband, but she could do melacha for herself, once the husband comes home, everybody agrees she can't be doing melacha. He's coming home after Kiddush Shalom Aleichem, and she's putting up the chult. You can't do that. Once he comes, it's Shabbos. Even those shittas hamakilim. So therefore, if you drive up to a camp, and then Mekabel Shabbos early, a lot of Gan Yisraels do that. And you, Falosich and Rab Moshe, that you say that just doing it for Kovid Beten, but not for Kovid Shabbos, she'll drive around, Kul al Memoida, that you shouldn't drive around. It's like the lady doing melacha in front of her husband. So this is the interesting discussion. There's a lot more said here. I just barely touched the surface, but it's a fascinating sugya, how the Zmanim work. There's other interesting thing. Maybe I don't know why people are not mahaded to do it. They bring down from the Zoyad this to be Mekabel Shabbos early, even before Lichtzen. There's a big movement in Eretz Yisrael, and they say that we're an Elef Hashishi Erev Shabbos, so by being Mekabel Shabbos early, we make Mashiach come earlier. There's a big movement. But if you're doing Helik other things, like you're driving, you're coming back from a train, you're going to be Mezaka Yidden, so let's also bring Mashiach early, so that Eibish to help him, that Eibish to sein Afrume Yid, and be Mekabel Teis Shabbos very early. And bring Mashiach. I'll just finish with one more interesting shaila. There's another halacha that if you light candles and you make a brocha before Plaga Mincha is an hour and a quarter before, it says, you have to light candles again with a brocha because it's not covered Shabbos. So they ask a shaila, according to the Shit of Rabbi Natam, that he says that Shkia is much later. So you have to, if you light more than 10 minutes before our Shkia, you're not Yetzer the mitzvah of Adlokas HaNeiros. But most poskim say that even Rabbi Natam will agree that you could do it starting from the real undergoing of the sun. So the Eibush to help him, the Eibush will machen free Shabbos, weil ich von Golos Yeshe Koyach. Mit trifft sich so.
When I was a kid in the Sifter, you can't talk about the Zishka.